All right, so I think that we're live. My name is Kristen and I'm from k.becca.com. And this evening we're going to be playing with Nuvo Embellishment Mousse. So you can see some of the fantastic colors that it comes in right here. I've been slowly collecting pretty much every color that they offer over the past year or so since it's been out. So if you're not familiar with it, basically it's sort of like a texture paste, but it can do a lot of different things. So I'm gonna quickly show you some of the great colors and then we'll head into the project. So as I said, there are so many gorgeous colors. It's hard for me, you know, I'm addicted to color, so I always wanna buy all the colors, and I have been slowly buying all of the colors of this stuff over the last year or so. And I have to say that probably my favorites are these blues. So there's the aquamarine, which is sort of like a light greenish blue, and then there's Old Navy, which is a really nice deep navy blue. And probably my favorite is, this is called Pacific Teal. And I'll open this up for you so you can see it. And I don't know how well you can see it on camera, but every color has this really fantastic shimmer. So I love this color. It's a really nice deep sort of teal blue, and you'll see, I'm going to get in here with a palette knife. You can see it's sort of like a thicker product, but it is actually pretty creamy and it's very shimmery and it's very easy to work with. So I'm going to get a paper towel really quick. I'm just going to wipe that off. So like I said, you can do several different things with this. It's a water-based product, so you can add water to it and do a lot of different things. So I'll just show you a little bit of that now. I'm going to move these out of the way. All right, so these are the ones that I'll be using for my project in a little bit, so I'm going to set these aside here. And I'm going to get a piece of cardstock, and I'll just get a couple of the colors here so I can show you. So you've already seen the Pacific Teal a little bit. So some of the things that you can do are you can take this right on your finger and you can see how creamy it is and how shimmery it is. Hoping that you can see that. And you can just sort of rub it right on the paper. And it gives you a really nice, subtle, shimmery effect. And you probably really can't see the shimmer here, but it is really pretty in person. So if you don't want to use your finger, you can actually take a paper towel and you can just rub it a little bit, get some on, and you see how easy that comes out of the little pot that it's in. And you can just rub it on like this. And you see how pretty that is? So that's pretty cool. So another thing that you can do is, I'm going to use this, I think this is called citrus green or lime green or something. I'm going to just take some of this, put this down, I'm going to spread it down on my cardstock here, and you can see how easy that moves around. And then I'll just wipe off my palette knife again. And now I'm going to actually take a paintbrush and get a little bit of water on it. I'm just going to add that. So you can see when I add that water, it basically turns into a sort of watercolor. So you can use it for watercoloring as well. So there are a lot of really neat possibilities with this. You can mix them together because it's water-based. I found that when it completely dries, and it does dry pretty quickly, especially when you do like the thinner layers like this that you just rub on. I found that after it does dry, you can add water to it again and it will start to move around, but it doesn't move around as freely as it did before it was dry. So just so you're aware of that. So I'll set this aside, and I just want to show you, because the blues really are my favorite. So I'm going to show you, here's a little card that I did earlier I just scraped out some samples of some of the different blues. So again, I'm really loving this Pacific teal. It's such a pretty color. And then the aquamarine, the Old Navy, and the powder blue. All such pretty colors. So for this project, I'm going with a more fall themed color palette. So the colors that I will be using, I'm going to put this away before I get too much into it. The colors that I'm going to be using for this project are the Mother of Pearl, which is a really nice sort of ivory, shimmery ivory. I'm going to use the Fresh Copper, which is a great coppery metallic. Coral Calypso, which is like a peachy orange. And then I have Powder Blue and Peony Pink. So we're going to be stenciling background. So I've already cut my stencil, and this is the Autumn Leaves stencil. It's going to be up in my shop at k.becca.com sometime next week. I have a whole bunch of new autumn cut files that are going to be live in the shop next week. So I have cut this out of Duralar, and if you don't know what Duralar is, it is an acetate alternative. It looks a lot, I get the 0.005 matte film. I really like the matte film, especially for stencils. And it comes in a pad like this. This one's a 9x12 pad, and it looks a lot like vellum. It isn't vellum, but it looks a lot like vellum, and it cuts just beautifully for stencils. So I cut the stencil out on my Silhouette Cameo, and the settings I use for this are a blade depth of 6, a speed of 4, and I double cut it. And it cut out beautifully. So before I start, I'm gonna prep my surface. So I'm working on a silicone craft mat, so nothing's going to really stick to it. And what I'm going to do for the embellishment mousse is I have a piece of palette paper that I cut in half. And it's nice, easy cleanup to use the palette paper. You could also mix it right on your surface if you're using a silicone craft mat. It's whatever you prefer. And I like this. This is the Royal Langnickel Essentials palette paper. So like I said, I cut a piece of that in half. And I'm just going to take some painter's tape, just a couple of little pieces, and just tape it in place so it doesn't move around as I work on it. Oh, I also wanted to mention something really cool when you cut out a stencil with a die cutting machine. You get all these little leftover bits. So I have all these really cute little leaves that I can use as vellum embellishments on other card projects or scrapbooking pages or paper projects. Lots of cool little things that you can do with those too. So now that I have my palette paper taped down, I have a piece of paper. I'm using Bristol Vellum as my card front. So I've cut this to a standard A2 size. So this is 4 1/4 inches wide by 5 1/2 inches tall. So I'm going to just place that on my surface. And then I'm going to just put the stencil over it and just sort of move it around a little bit until it's where I want it to be. And then once I have that placed, I'm going to come back in with my painter's tape. And I'm just going to tape that down well so it doesn't shift around whenever I'm working. So I'm just going to want to put that tape on all 4 sides. All right, so that's taped pretty well in place. And the first thing I'm going to do is like I mentioned earlier, two of the colors that I'm using are the peony pink and the powder blue. But because this is a fall palette, I don't really want to use either on its own. I was actually looking for a little bit of like an orchidy sort of light purpley color, and they do have a couple of really beautiful light lavender, lilac shades in the Nuvo Embellishment Mousse line, but I don't happen to have either of those, so I'm going to mix my own color. So I'm going to open up both of these. And you really don't need much when you're working with this. I'm just going to get out just a little bit. It's probably even a little bit too much. There, just maybe about that much. And I'm going to spread that on my palette paper. Then I'll wipe off my palette knife before I go to the blue. And then I'm also going to, I'm going to get out, probably try to get out about the same amount of the blue. And I'm going to basically mash them together on this mat and mix them up really well until they blend together. So that's another great thing about this. It blends pretty easily. So if you want to create custom colors like I'm doing here, it's not hard at all to do that. So you can see that they're coming together and they're making a really nice light purpley color. So I got some on the top of my palette knife, so I'm just gonna wipe that off. And then I'll just continue mixing this until it's pretty thoroughly mixed. And it doesn't have to be 100%. You know, we're doing something that's very loose and very organic. So if you have little bits of the blue or the pink showing through, that's totally fine. Okay, so I have that nice and mixed, and that is such a pretty color. Now I'm going to put the lids back on containers and set those aside because I won't be needing those. Then I'm going to wipe off my palette knife with a paper towel again. And then I'm going to start. So the first color that I'm going to use up at the top here is going to be this mother of pearl, which is a nice ivory, warm ivory shimmer color. So I'm going to take some of that out. And since this is thicker, it's more like, you know, if you're comparing it to texture paste is more like a buttercream frosting, whereas the Nuvo Embellishment Mousse is more like spreadable butter. So what I like to do sometimes, since it's a little bit stiffer, this has been worked before. I used this little bit before and scraped it back in the jar, but sometimes it'll come out of the container a little bit stiff. So especially if you're working with a stencil, you want to just move it around a little bit before you spread it onto the paper, because sometimes if you don't, it's a little bit stiff and it'll slide around and it might cause the paper to shift or the stencil to shift. So that's the only reason that I do that. So I'm going to start up at the top. I'm just going to lightly spread this on it first, and then sort of with a scraping motion, I want to fill in all of these areas, all of the stenciled leaf areas. And I'm gonna do it at a little bit of an angle here. So I'll scrape off excess as I go, and then just work that like that. So it's just a little bit angled because we're going for a gradient. So we're going to be mixing other colors. So in between each color, I just want to wipe my palette knife off very quickly with a paper towel. So the next color is going to be the custom purple that we just mixed earlier. So I'm going to come in with that, spread that around. And you can see I've worked this a little bit before putting it onto the paper. So it's sort of loosens up a little bit, and it's much, much easier to spread. I mean, it's easy to spread either way. So what I want to do in this area, you know, you see in the in-between areas, I'm just going to scrape that over so these colors start to mix a little bit. So I love it in those areas where they mix. You can see a little bit of that mother of pearl coming into that leaf there. Very cool effect. So after I'm finished with that, you know what? I'm going to scrape that back on in case I need it later. And then I'm going to wipe off my palette knife before going to the next color. And the next color is going to be this Calypso Coral, which is a light peachy color. So I'm going to scrape that out. And again, this seems a little bit softer, so I think I'm going to go right in. I'm going to go right in with this. And you can see it does slide around a little bit, so I'm going to go back here and just work it a little on here to make it loosen up. And then I'll take it over to the card front. Okay. So I just want to, it's a fairly thick layer, but I want to spread it pretty evenly. Scrape off the excess there. And then I want to take it up like this and just mix it with some of that purple color that we made earlier. So I'm going to take this down like this as well. Just mix it all together. All right, so we just have one final color now. This is the Fresh Copper. It's a really nice metallic copper shade. And so I'm just going to do what I've been doing with the other colors and just scrape out just a little bit of it. Just about that much. Take it over to my palette paper and just work it a little bit until it starts to loosen up. Then I'm just going to come in, scrape it over my stencil, just rubbing it across like this. You can see the copper starting to mix with some of that peach or coral shade. I'll get a little bit more. I still have a part of a leaf down here. All right, so now I'm finished with all of the mousse. So I'm going to close up this jar and set it all aside. And I'm just going to carefully lift off all of the pieces of painter's tape. Making sure to hold the stencil still as you do that so it doesn't shift around. One more piece. Okay, now the moment of truth. I will lift this off like this. And what I do with stencils when I'm stenciling, I always keep this Rubbermaid container full of a little bit of water, and I pop the stencil right in there as soon as I'm done because I don't have a sink in the studio where I work. So I just put that in there and then set it aside, and then I'll just go wash it off after. And it does, the embellishment mousse washes off very easily with just plain water. Sometimes you might need a little bit of soap. And here is our card front. So I really like how that looks, especially in the areas where the colors mix, which is a very cool effect. All right, so I'm going to set this aside. And then I'm just going to quickly clean up. So you can just easily wipe this off like this with just a paper towel. And you definitely want to have paper towels on hand for this project. I'll dip this one in a little bit of water because it cleans up even more easily if you have a little bit of water, since it's a water-soluble product. I'm just going to wipe that up really quickly. And then I'll pull this up and I can just toss that away. So see, it's very quick and easy cleanup. So I'll just take a dry paper towel, wipe that over. And I have one that I actually made earlier. It takes about an hour to 2 hours to dry when it's on thicker like this. If you just rub it on very thinly, it'll dry very quickly. But this took about an hour or two to dry. And once it dries, I hope you can see how pretty and shimmery this is. It's just such a pretty effect. So I have, to finish the card, I've cut an A2 card base, and this is a top folding vertical. So it's 4¼ inches wide by 5½ inches tall. And I'm just gonna get my double-sided tape runner, turn this over, and just cover the back with adhesive. Oh, I thought I was gonna run out, so that one ran out, so I'm gonna start a new one. Real quick here. So I've pretty thoroughly covered that. I'm just gonna take the card base, line that up at the top, and press that down into place. So for the finishing touch, I have this Hello Fall Sentiment. This is from my new Hello Fall digital stamp set that's available in my shop. And what I did was I printed it out I created it as a print and cut file in Silhouette Studio, and I printed it out on my laser printer. And then I foiled it with rose gold foil using my Heidi Swapp Mink. So it gives it a really nice shiny foiled look that I think goes really well with this color scheme. I'm going to pop that up a little bit. I want it to be a little bit dimensional. So I have these adhesive foam squares that I'm just going to put all around the back. And I'm going to cut one in half because I have these two areas that are just a little bit too small for a full size. I'm going to stick that there. And I'll stick this here. And then I'll peel off all of the protective paper. And then I just want to line that up a little bit above center vertically and centered horizontally. I think that looks pretty good. And then when I'm happy where it's at, I'll just press it in place, and that finishes the card. So that is the project. I'll be adding all of the supplies that I used in this project in the description area below the video within the next couple of hours, so you can check back for those. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this project, I would really appreciate it if you give the video a thumbs up. I'll be starting Halloween projects next week, so be sure to tune in then. And if you're not subscribed, you can hit the subscribe button down below and make sure that the bell icon is clicked so you'll get notifications for all of the new videos. All right, thanks again for watching.